Alright, welcome back AP Psych. We're getting started with your second video in Unit 2 on biological psychology. You just covered the neuron, neural structure, all different parts and pieces, neurotransmitters that communicate, all of those things. So we're going to expand upon that by getting into the nervous and endocrine systems today to get a little bit more of a bird's eye view on how all of this works. It's still going to be a pretty simplified view of this, but if this is something you're going to pursue in college, you'll get into a lot more depth when that happens. So we'll start with the nervous system. All right, so our nervous system has two parts. It consists of all of the nerve cells in our entire body. So we're talking thousands, right? It's the body's electrochemical communication system. And you just learned about how the neuron works and how that electrical signal is sent, so you kind of understand that. But there's two parts, like I said: the central nervous system, which is made up of your brain and spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, which is all of the thousands of nerves running throughout the rest of your body. You got central, brain and spinal cord, and peripheral, just like the periphery of your vision. It's in the outside of your brain and spinal cord, in that line of the central nervous system. All right. So central is the neural center of the body and our body's control center. Think of it as like our body's computer. Right? Your brain is like your computer, and your spinal cord is like that, all those cords running to your computer that it provides it with like power and information that it needs to process. Right? It's a super highway of all these nerves, transmitting messages to and from the body and the rest of the body. Right? That's super highway. The peripheral nervous system is made up of two parts. We're going to break it up even further here in a second. But the first part is something called the somatic nervous system. Okay, the somatic nervous system is all of our voluntary movement. Anytime you're moving around, doing things that you are choosing to do, that's your somatic nervous system at work, right? They don't just happen. These are the things that you choose to do, and your somatic nervous system allows you to do that. So it controls voluntary movements and communication to and from the sense organs, right? Which is mostly our skin, but also our eyes, right? Sense of taste, smell, right? We can choose to do those things when we want to. On the other side, we have something called the autonomic nervous system. Okay? This controls our involuntary functions, or items that happen automatically, right? Things you don't have to think about. Okay? Hopefully you don't have to think about breathing. You don't have to think about your heart rate and your heartbeat and digestion, right? Those are all automatic things. So that's our two branches of the nervous system: somatic, which is voluntary movement; autonomic, heartbeat, breathing, digestion, stuff we don't think about. We're going to break this one down even further. So in the autonomic nervous system, right, so we've got the nervous system, brain, spinal cord, that's our central nervous system, right? From there is peripheral. Within that, we have the somatic and autonomic. Autonomic has two parts as well, okay, so we're breaking it down even further. First is sympathetic nervous system. This is the division of our autonomic nervous system that arouses your body in a stressful situation. You've probably heard the term fight or flight before, right? So when you're feeling under stress, your body increases heart rate, your pupils dilate so you can see everything you need to, your blood pressure is going to increase, right? It's preparing you to fight or flee, right? So that's one half of the autonomic nervous system. You don't do that, right? It does it automatically. Then you have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the exact opposite. This is the state that hopefully we're in most of our lives, most of the time. It's a calming system. It's where we conserve our energy. We help keep a constant internal state, keeps our body at what we call homeostasis. A good way to remember this is rest and digest. So you have fight or flight up here with the sympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. Another great way I like to think about that, putting these two together: when you jump out of an airplane, let's say you're skydiving, you jump out, boom, your sympathetic nervous system is kicked in, right? You're feeling stressed, you got this adrenaline rush, your body is ready to try to survive in some way. And the moment that your parachute opens up, you're like, oh, I'm actually going to survive this. There's this feeling of calm that comes over you from the parasympathetic nervous system. So parasympathetic, remember, parachute, helps calm you down, rest and digest. So we just mentioned this a little bit, but just to show you those nicknames again: the sympathetic nervous system arouses you or gets you ready to either fight or flee, right? It's going to dilate your pupils, accelerate your heartbeat, turn off digestion. Anything that is not vital to the situation that you are in for survival is turning it off. And everything that you need to survive, it's turning it up. On the other side, parasympathetic calms you down. That's our rest and digest, right? Contracts your pupils back to normal size, heartbeat slows down, stimulates digestion, all of those things to bring you back to homeostasis or to your normal level. Okay. So within this nervous system, there are 3 different types of neurons that you need to know about. Okay. You've already learned about the structure like we talked about with your first video. But within these 3 neurons you need to know, there's ones called sensory neurons, and those do exactly what they sound like. They're going to carry incoming information from the sense receptors in your body to your central nervous system, right? Then we've got interneurons. These are like the in-between messengers between your sensory neurons and your motor neurons. Okay, so the interneuron acts as a messenger between the two and exists entirely within your central nervous system, your spinal cord, and your brain. Okay, and our motor neurons carry outgoing information from our central nervous system, our brain and spinal cord, to react, to move our muscles and glands. Okay, so I'll show you an example of this here on the next slide. But you got sensory, interneurons, and motor neurons, and here's how they work. So let's say you are you're feeling something hot, right? You put your hand on something hot. There's dendrites in your skin. You know, dendrites are those receptor parts of your neuron that are receiving information. So you touch something hot, those dendrites sense that information, and they're going to send that information down the axon. And you have neurons in your body that could be as much as 3 feet long, right? All the way down your arm, through your hand, into your spinal cord. So that sensory information goes from your hand through the axon into your spinal cord, where it then can be either sent to your brain or interpreted right then and there in your spinal cord, right? But let's say it goes up to your brain, and your brain is interpreting that, saying, ooh, that's getting pretty hot, right? That's dangerous. So then that information comes through your brain, back down your spinal cord, and out a motor neuron, right? And that motor neuron is going to allow you to remove your hand, right? And that's essentially how we sense and react to the world around us. We have sensory neurons, interneurons, and motor neurons that all interact. And that is all happening in milliseconds, right? Our brain processes things so quickly, our spinal cord transmits information so quickly that we're able to do all of that and move our hand, and almost sometimes it's without even thinking, right? We don't even realize that we're processing that because it happens so quickly. So those are the 3 types of neurons that we need to know in AP Psych, and that's going to introduce us to the endocrine system. So the nervous system, brain, spinal cord is your central, peripheral nervous system takes in information in the world around you so you can communicate and move and do the things that you need to. It also interacts with your endocrine system, right? So your nervous system is your neurochemical, electrochemical system in your body. Your endocrine system is your body's slower chemical messenger, and it communicates via hormones. So under normal circumstances, it is going to work in parallel with your parasympathetic nervous system. And under crisis circumstances, it's going to work with your sympathetic nervous system, right? So rest and digest, it's going to release hormones that are needed for growth. And in fight or flight, it's going to release hormones that are needed for, adrenaline and getting your body ready, prepared to face some type of crisis. So here's an example. Say you're walking down the street, somebody pulls a gun on you, right? That's going to kick you into fight or flight mode right away, right? Well, epinephrine, as we've learned, is both a neurotransmitter, but it's also a hormone, right? It's essentially adrenaline. That's going to get released into your bloodstream from your adrenal gland. It's going to sustain your fight or flight reaction for as long as you need it to get out of that situation or to fight back in that situation. Or if you're injured, to be able to move and push through it. I'm sure some of you have experienced adrenaline where you're so hyped up that you don't even realize that you got hurt or something like that, and then the next day you're like, man, I'm so sore, I didn't even know that, right? If you're an athlete of some kind, if you ever hurt yourself, you might have an adrenaline rush that helps keep that pain away for a while until you've completed whatever situation you needed to complete. So the endocrine system finishes what your sympathetic nervous system starts, keeping your heart pounding, muscles tense, ready for action. So they kind of work together. The most important piece of your endocrine system is your pituitary gland. This is your master gland. It's going to keep all of your endocrine responses under tight control. It tells all of the other glands when to release the hormones that your body needs at different times. So how do we have a connection between the master gland, your endocrine system, and our nervous system? Well, we have a brain structure you're going to learn about in the next video called the hypothalamus, when we go over all of our different brain structures. It sends out these signals and it controls the pituitary gland and tells it, hey, we need this released, we need that released, we need you to work in conjunction with the nervous system in this way. So that's our connection, right? The hypothalamus is our nervous system connection to the endocrine system and the pituitary gland. And one type of hormone, and we don't necessarily need to worry about the glands as much as we need to learn to understand what the hormones do that are secreted by these glands. So the first hormone we got to talk about is something called oxytocin. Maybe you've heard about this. It's called like the cuddle or love hormone, right? It's famous. People talk about increases in oxytocin, helps increase their happiness and their feelings of love and closeness to their family and things like that, because it is associated with paired bonding, right? When you find someone that you are attracted to and you pair, oxytocin can be released when you're with them and things like that. And it also reinforces the early attachment between mothers and their infants. It helps women get through childbirth and that connection to their child, as well as the bonding between romantic partners, which we just talked about. So this is produced by your hypothalamus, but is secreted and released by the pituitary gland, right? That's oxytocin. That's our first of several. Our next hormones, adrenaline, right? Your adrenal glands are on top of your kidneys, right, and your abdomen, and they regulate your fight or flight response, right, and metabolism through the release of adrenaline. We've all felt this before, whether it's on a roller coaster or maybe you get upset and you're fighting with your siblings or something like that, and that feeling of adrenaline, right? Some people are adrenaline junkies because of the feeling that it gives them, but that purpose of adrenaline is to help us through a fight or flight or a stressful time in our lives to get through it. Then you have the pineal gland with another hormone that I'm sure many of you are familiar with or have heard of before. The pineal gland is in your small little pine cone shaped structure in your brain. It releases melatonin, which is a natural hormone that's mainly produced to help play a role in your sleep-wake cycle and regulate your circadian rhythm, which is our 24-hour sleeping waking cycle, right? When should you wake up? When should you fall asleep? When it's time to go to sleep and the lights turn down and the sun goes down, your brain naturally starts to produce melatonin. If some of you have had trouble sleeping, maybe your doctor has prescribed you to take some extra melatonin to help with that. All right, then we have the two hunger hormones. First up is something called ghrelin. It's a hormone that's produced in your stomach, in your gastrointestinal tract, right? And it's called the hunger hormone because it increases the drive to eat. When your stomach is empty, when your body needs energy, ghrelin is produced by that stomach to say, hey, we need food down here, you should be hungry. And a great way to remember that is ghrelin, right? Stomach growling, your stomach's growling, it's releasing ghrelin, right? It's telling you to eat. On the flip side, you have something called leptin, and its main function is to regulate the balance between your food's intake and its energy use. So this is not going to be the one that tells you to eat like ghrelin is, it's going to be the one that tells you that you're full, right? And it's in your fat cells, right? When your fat cells are empty, it's going to say, hey, we don't need to release leptin because we need to eat. That's when ghrelin is going to come about, right? But when your fat cells fill up and they have full of fat, you don't need any more nutrients, your body's going to release, they're going to release leptin to let you know, hey, you don't need to eat anymore. You're full, you have enough energy to do what you need to do today or in the next several hours or whatever it is. So ghrelin tells you, hey, it's time to eat. Leptin says, nah, we're good. We got plenty of energy. We got plenty of carbs and calories stored up for the day's activities. So that's a very quick breakdown of the nervous system and its major parts and functions, and the endocrine system and its major hormones and their functions. They're pretty similar in some ways, but in a lot of ways there are some big differences. The hormones are chemicals synthesized by various endocrine glands throughout your body, right? Secreted in the bloodstream. Whereas our neurotransmitters are chemical messengers of our neurons in our brains, spinal cords, and throughout our peripheral nervous system in our body. Okay, so some key differences. Hormones tend to be much slower, right? They take minutes, sometimes even longer to be released. Their length of influence, much longer, right? Think of puberty, right? Think of development that you guys are going through right now. All of those hormones and things that you're experiencing, the mood swings, stuff like that, all of those things are mostly caused by hormones that are fluctuating in your body as you develop. And they move through your bloodstream, right? So they're much slower, they last longer, and it's in the blood. Whereas neurotransmitters, which you talked about last video, they happen in milliseconds, right? The fact that I'm able to move around and do all these things is because my brain is communicating with itself and my peripheral nervous system so quickly, right? But they also don't last very long, okay? And their method of transmission is not the bloodstream, it's those neurons in the peripheral nervous system throughout your body that allows you to do that. So we're gonna break this down in class and go over those hormones a little bit more and try to come up with some examples and some real world applications for them to help you remember them and apply them and maybe understand them a little bit more. So as usual, if you have any questions, write them down in your notes so we can talk about them in class, and we'll see you then.